This is Your Partners in Pain, a podcast that aims to bring together those who live with pain, healthcare providers who treat chronic pain, and researchers working on topics that affect people living with pain. This podcast is a must-listen for anyone experiencing pain or anyone trying to help those who live with it. Your Partners in Pain is presented by the Saskatchewan Pain Society, also known as SaskPain, and I am your host, Alexandria. Each episode, we are going to speak to Saskatchewan-based healthcare providers and researchers who have information and education to share about pain science and pain care. We are also going to speak with everyday people as they share their incredible stories of living with pain and the techniques they've used to help manage it and live well. It is important to note that the information presented in this podcast represents the opinions of the host and the guests that appear on the show and not that of SaskPain. The content presented should not be taken as direct healthcare advice, but for informational purposes only. Because each individual is unique, please consult your healthcare provider for any questions or concerns you have, or before you incorporate any of the ideas presented in this podcast into your own treatment plan. For episode 4, we are speaking to Ross McCreery. Ross is an incredible advocate in the Saskatchewan chronic pain community and abroad, where he shares his own experiences of living with complex regional pain syndrome, also known as CRPS. Ross is the founder of CRPS Awareness Day in Saskatchewan, which falls on November 2nd. He is a board member of the Saskatchewan Pain Society, and he is actively involved as a patient family advisor for various research endeavors. He is a published writer and speaker, has an amazing website and blog called Painfully Optimistic, and today he's going to tell us all about his chronic pain journey and the importance of patience and persistence. Ross, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I have been following your journey online through your awesome blog for a while now, so I am really excited to have you here so that you can share your story with more folks.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I mean, any opportunity that I get to share this story, I take. And so I value being asked to be here today.
Well, thank you. And we appreciate it too. But to start, can you explain to listeners what is complex regional pain syndrome?
Complex regional pain syndrome is a neurological autoimmune disorder. It has to do with the peripheral nerves. There's not a lot known about it. And so really what most people relate to what is CRPS is the extreme chronic pain that you get from it, the burning sensation that an individual sometimes has, and all the other symptoms. But it is believed to be that the peripheral nervous system has in some way become affected.
Well, and can you explain, like in your experience, what does that kind of feel like when you're saying pain? Are there specific sensations that are occurring? Like physiologically, what's happening?
That's where things are a bit different for the individual, because what they're finding and what makes it so difficult to diagnose. Part of the problem is that every individual that's diagnosed with CRPS is diagnosed from a individual set of symptoms that they deal with. So for myself, I get the burning sensation. I'm affected in my left side of my body, basically. So it started in my left wrist and hand and went down into my left ankle. And for me, it's a burning sensation that I get. It's an excruciating nerve pain that I get. People don't often relate nerve pain or separate nerve pain from just regular muscle pain. If you've ever had a toothache or had some tooth dental surgery done, then you'll know what nerve pain feels like. It's the most excruciating pain you've ever felt. So that is a secondary or another symptom that I deal with. I deal with some hair loss. I deal with some atrophy of the limbs. I deal with some waxiness of the skin. So there is a lot of swelling. Not everybody has swelling with associated with, but I do have extreme swelling that comes with. So, these are just some of the symptoms that the symptoms that people deal with. But, the primary are obviously the pain, the swelling, and the burning.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit more about your personal story? What was your life like prior to being diagnosed with CRPS? Was there anything in particular that set it off for you?
For me, I'd worked really hard to put a career in place for myself. I'd been with the same company for about 10, 15 years. Had worked myself up into a senior management position. I was active. I was doing a lot of hiking. I was doing a lot, I was constantly out and active in life. When I was diagnosed, we had just gotten back from China with our first daughter and had adopted our first daughter. And then all of a sudden, 6 months after arriving home, I had to have a surgery done to remove a lipoma or a cyst off of my left wrist. And within 24 hours of having that surgery done, my entire arm, right from fingertips right to shoulder, was triple, 100 times the size. It didn't even look like my arm any longer. And along with that, I was getting that burning and that excruciating nerve pain. We went back to the doctor figuring it had to be something post-operatively that might be an issue. And that's what the doctor thought originally. And he said, no, it's just post-operative swelling. But that's where my wife as a nurse, and what she recognized as, no, this isn't just post-operative swelling. And, it turned into a journey of probably seeing 10 to 15 doctors at least here in our city and across the province. And nobody here could diagnose it. So I ended up having to fly out to Vancouver and see somebody out there who diagnosed me instantly when I walked into his office.
That sounds incredibly painful and frustrating. And you're coming out of something that's supposed to be just a really simple procedure. And then to have that happen, that sounds really scary, not knowing what is going on. And at such a stressful time when you're just starting a new family.
I'll never forget, I was due to go on a business trip. This is about a week or two after I had the surgery. I was still dealing with all this swelling, but I still had a job. I still had at that time, I'd gone off. I went off a little bit after diagnosis once I figured I couldn't maintain my position of where I was working. I'll never forget the phone call. I was due to go on a business trip. And my wife called me and said, do not get on that plane. They're looking for a DVT or blood clot, basically, right? They had said to me, do not get on that plane because, and that was just the type of fear that I was constantly living with 24/7 as they checked out each thing within my body. I was looked at for every rare disease, they were testing for everything, right? So as you waited for any of those test results to come back, you were living in constant fear of, what's this mean? Along with trying to deal with the pain, right?
Yeah. And I hate to say this, but I feel like, unfortunately, this is common for a lot of people with chronic pain when they haven't figured out what is happening yet. They see so many people, they get told so many terrifying things. There's all that anxiety of the unknown. And unless you have lived it, it is really difficult to explain how stressful and emotionally and physically taxing that is. So good for you for not stopping. And you did eventually get an answer, which is incredible. Not everybody does. But can you paint a picture for us of how your life has changed since this pain began affecting you?
It's funny because I tell people that, in some ways my life has gotten better. And it's hard for people to understand that, having gone through this. I mean, I was diagnosed 17 years ago, so I've lived with this for 17 years now. It's hard for people to understand that. I tell them that even though there's been a lot of change, and a lot of that change has been difficult and is hard, some of that change is very positive too, because it's made me appreciate life a lot more now. It's allowed me to appreciate every minute that I get with my family, and the small things that you just miss because you're so busy with life, right? But some of those changes that happened, I mean, I'm now on permanent disability because I can't work. It's one of those conditions where my symptoms get worse if I have a lot of stress. So I have to, and let's face it, you face stressful situations in day-to-day life. So you have to look at, I had to look at the bigger picture, which was, and I'll never forget going to see one of the doctors that was finally was able to help me. He said to me, he gave me a piece of advice and said, consider yourself retired now, because your full-time job now is taking care of yourself and controlling, managing your pain and trying to, navigate the mental health, and not only the physical side of managing that pain, but the mental health side of things as well. So try to take out as much stress as you can from your life. So I'm on permanent disability now. It really flipped things upside down in our household because my wife had wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And our dream was, have her fulfill her dream of being that stay-at-home mom. And I was now in this role of being able to provide financially for the family. I'd worked really hard to get to that point, and we as a couple had worked really hard to put ourselves into that situation of being able to have her stay at home. And now I'm flipped into the role of playing Mr. Mom, where I'm a stay-at-home dad, and I've had to take on the role of raising the kids while my wife went back to work. Disability doesn't cover all of your bills. You get paid a pittance of what my salary was. But along with that is, I lost my identity and who I had, who I knew myself as. And the things that I'd worked so hard, leading up to diagnosis, it was like I had to figure out who I was all over again, and what life was going to be like out, after diagnosis.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, when they get that chronic pain experience and they have all these radical life changes, which aren't necessarily by choice, that reestablishing your identity and having to adjust the expectations for maybe some of the goals you have, I think that's one of the hardest parts of living with chronic pain for sure. So I can totally sympathize with you there. But you did mention that you did find a doctor who managed to help you. So have you found effective methods for living well, or treatments that have really assisted you in your pain management?
Yeah, it took about 2 years to, from the start of trying to figure things out and going through the circuit of physicians and specialists here in Saskatchewan to, finally go out to Vancouver, speak to somebody there, work my way back to, to here, to finally find a care team that was able to help me. It's not one doctor, it's a team of people that now look after me. It was really a matter of trying to figure out, because they don't know enough about this disease. It was a matter of trying to figure out what was going to work for me. And so we had to go through a whole host of different things. So one of the doctors, I have neurostimulators that are implanted that help with blocking the pain signals out. that go to my brain. And that's part of this disease, is that somehow the wrong pain signals are being sent to my brain. So that is part of the therapy that's used. But things like breathing exercises, meditation, diet, exercise, all of those things are, I've had to tailor for myself. That would be the biggest recommendation probably that I would make to a person is you have to really try to, it's going to take some trial and error to figure out what works for you to manage your pain. It's that individualized, right? And so I think people in this day and age, people are looking for the quick result. And you're not going, I think, as frustrated as people get with me, I say it's not necessarily, it could take 2 years, for you to reap the benefits of changing some of these things that you need to change in your life. So for me, it was a matter of like diet was a big one for me. And but that took a radical change in my diet. It meant building in things like anti-inflammatory foods and getting rid of any processed and getting, really stripping the diet down to look at, what do I need personally? That isn't to say that every form of chronic pain is going to be the same, but my advice is that it's a lifestyle, is a change in lifestyle is what it is. You're looking for things like meditation, foods, exercises, right? When we look at that, it's encompassing that in order to create change and manage your pain, it's about adapting to a lifestyle.
That makes sense, 100%. And I feel like one of our big themes that has been ongoing throughout the podcast is that idea that you mentioned, that there's not that one size fits all. There has to be individualized care. What works for one person is going to be a disaster for somebody else. So chronic pain is absolutely a huge practice in patience, which is really hard to deal with. But unfortunately, that is the reality of it.
It's one of those things, like I often tell people that at the beginning, I had to go through the grieving stage, right? I had to go through probably 4 years of anger and all those emotional things that I needed to deal with inside before I could truly understand and want to go and create positive change for myself, right? I was so wrapped up in the anger I was feeling, or what's this going to mean for me down the road. I was so wrapped up in all those personal things and I had to sort of go through that whole process first and then understand that, oh, hold on here. If I'm going to change anything about managing my pain and improving my quality of life, then what that means is that I have to do the hard work, and I have to be willing to put up with whatever time it takes to create that change.
I know you are heavily involved in chronic pain awareness. And earlier this year, you were actually nominated for a number of awards for the advocacy work that you do, which is incredible. So congratulations. And thank you for your service to the chronic pain community. It's so important to have people like you. But will you tell us, how did you get interested in or started in that type of advocacy work?
It really came out of advocating for myself, right? I think for me, it's easy because 17 years ago, this disease, condition, whatever you want to call it, I mean, chronic pain condition is what a lot of people refer to it, right? But 17 years ago, there wasn't the help there, right? I had to go looking for the help. I had to be the one, when you go to 10 or 15 physicians and specialists here, and nobody can do anything, and nobody's willing to do anything, which, being honest, there were people that I went to see that basically said, can't do anything for you, sorry, and that was the way it was left. So, I wasn't willing to just sit back and let life pass me by. So it was me going out and advocating for myself and pushing to create that change, create that awareness. It took me, I'll never forget when I started CRPS Awareness Day here in the province of Saskatchewan in 2016. I was laying in bed one night and it was, it was a really bad pain night. And I just took it upon myself to write the premier a letter to say, we shouldn't have to suffer like this. And I want to see change. I want to see, I want to see people that are dealing with what I'm dealing with. I don't want to see another person go through what I've had to go through for the last 15 years. That's what drives the passion, is me wanting to see that change happen. And through working with some of the non-for-profits that I have, and through, SAS Pain and, all of those initiatives that we have going here in Saskatchewan, seeing some of that change start to happen now pushes you even harder to say, okay, you know what? It's taken a long time, but we are creating change. We are making a difference.
I think a lot of people end up in pain and patient advocacy roles after personally seeing the gaps in the system while trying to get their own care. And I'm sure there are so many CRPS patients who are very grateful for what you have done. So again, thank you for your service to the chronic pain community. But in line with the patient perspective, what do you wish you could say to clinicians or healthcare providers in the area of pain?
It's a tough one, because there's a lot of things that I would love to say. But the biggest thing is, let me be a part of the solution. Listen to me and pull me into the fold. And, because I'm an expert, I'm an expert in living my pain. And if you don't know about the condition, or you don't know about chronic pain, then utilize me, and, use your professional background and training to take the information from me, who's the expert that's living it, and let's work together to figure this out and see what we need to do to provide better treatment.
Pain patients as the experts. I love that. And it's so important to have their voices heard and involved in the process, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to call this podcast Your Partners in Pain. It has to be a collaborative effort, but it is hard to know that after so many years of suffering, that in a lot of ways, it's always up to the patients to do a lot of the labor to improve care. Chronic pain patients have spent so much time involved in their own healthcare and trying to make themselves feel better that it seems so unfair to have them continuing investing time and energy in improving it when they already feel unwell. So I do hope that a podcast like this can, make it just a little bit easier for people, so they're not always down on the front lines, writing letters to premiers, which I wish we didn't have to do. But again, I thank you for that. But on that note, do you have anything to say to someone who has just been diagnosed with CRPS and are possibly feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, don't give up hope. Don't give up hope, and keep, be your own advocate. I think it goes back to what I was saying. You feel a lot of anger. You feel you have so many emotions going on at the time that you're diagnosed. And let's face it, hearing a diagnosis of CRPS, there's no cure, there's nothing that's, there's no real formal treatment there. To hear the news that you get when you're diagnosed with something like CRPS, And I use CRPS because I think it's a good example of, where you feel that hopelessness, and you get a lot of emotion that comes through you because you want to give up, right? You don't know. They've nicknamed this disease the suicide disease because it's so painful that people give up and people commit suicide over it and their lives. And it's sad. Because so that's why I say, don't give up hope. I think the biggest thing, there's people here, like myself, there's different, professional people that you can go see. There's lots of people here that can help you walk through it, right? That can get you, I think that was my biggest thing, is I felt so alone when I was newly diagnosed, that I was going to be facing this all on my, all on my lonesome, and that I wouldn't have anyone, and now I've got so many different friends through all of this. And so when I'm feeling bad, I can call them up and I can say, or I can text them, or I can send them that email to say, you know what, I need some encouragement today, because it's been a hard day. I can't manage my symptoms, and you're just having that person there for you to support you and help you is just priceless.
That solidarity and social support, it's so essential to all healing activities and just feeling well in general, whether it's chronic pain or any health experience that someone is having. And in my experience, when someone does get a new diagnosis or label, many of us end up on that Dr. Google wormhole because we aren't being given a lot of pain education or options for treatment. And it's scary and it's isolating. So it is always so important to remember that there are always more options to the story than just accepting the diagnosis you've received. And you don't have to accept that you are going to live a limited life, because there are always options. We are almost out of time here. So would you like to mention anything else we haven't discussed yet today, Ross?
I think the biggest thing I'd want to recommend is, as people with lived experience, your life is valuable, and you have to fight for treatment. But let's work together, and let's not criticize one another, and let's work together to find solutions to some of these issues that we face. Not just here in our province, but across Canada and around the world.
Excellent. Yes, those are awesome parting words. And since this is a Saskatchewan-based podcast, would you be willing to share with us what one of your favorite things about living in the province is?
I would have to say my cottage out at Echo Lake is it's my happy place. It's where I go when everything is weighing heavy on me, and I can get out of the city and just feel like I am in a completely different place. It allows me to relax and decompress. And, especially when I'm having a hard time, it's just good to go and get that refreshing change of scenery and know that the next, that I'm able to just forget what's going on for half a minute. Even though I can't get rid of the pain, I can certainly get rid of some of the mental anxiety that's going on, at that time.
Absolutely. That sounds awesome. Thank you, Ross.
Thanks for having me.
Again, I want to thank Ross for his bravery in sharing his incredible story with us today. If anyone would like to contact Ross directly, you can find him all over social media, such as on Instagram and Twitter at Rossco006. That is ROSSCO006, as well as on his website and Facebook pages by Googling Painfully Optimistic. Lastly, by the time this episode is released, we will be in the full swing of Neuropathic Pain Awareness Month in Canada. Given this, we invite you to learn more about CRPS and follow the newly minted hashtag Get loud for CRPS to continue to raise awareness and share information for those struggling with this condition. Thank you for listening to Your Partners in Pain, a podcast for people experiencing pain and those who help individuals living with pain. Funding for this podcast was provided by the Saskatchewan Community Initiatives Fund and the Saskatchewan Pain Society. For more information about our organization or to find additional resources, please find us on social media at SaskPain or visit our official website, www.saskpain.ca.